What's going on, Ahsoka fans? It's John here with City Park Rangers, and we're here to talk about Ahsoka Episode 3. But before we get going, we'd be honored if you subscribe to the channel and click the like button on this video. Now let's get into it. Alright, so the episode kicks things off with Sabine training with Hu Yang, and it's very typical lightsaber training. They're using not real sabers, very akin to what they did in Rebels, which is cool to see. And Hu Yang makes a remark about Sabine's severe inability to become a Jedi, basically just because she's out of touch with the Force, which is very much in keeping with Rebels, and I thought that was a cool nod. I saw a lot of people after the last review that I did saying basically that Sabine shouldn't even have a lightsaber or anything, like it was very clear that she wasn't Force sensitive in Rebels and yada yada yada, which makes sense, but then at the end of the Rebels, she literally goes with Ahsoka to be trained, so it's like, I don't know, you can't win sometimes. After Hu Yang kind of tells her that she's done okay, but not good, then Ahsoka steps in and gives her kind of the blinder and does some training on Force use and feeling her surroundings and understanding where things are in the room without being able to actually see them. And a lot of this, I think, is really to undo some of Sabine's Mandalorian training. Not that it's a bad thing, but even at the end, Ahsoka kind of makes a remark about Sabine's anger and frustration being good motivators, but ultimately knocking you out of balance, which I also find a little bit interesting just because Ahsoka is not a Jedi anymore. However, Ahsoka is very clearly in keeping with most of the Jedi sort of rules, regulations, ethics, all those sorts of things. It's clear. The reason that she walked away from the Order was because they literally betrayed her. So it has nothing to do necessarily with principle. It has everything to do with kind of like the council and that sort of thing. And then from there, we move on to Hera talking to the Chancellor and some senators about sending a small fleet to accompany Sabine and Ahsoka as they're going to investigate what's going on. After episode 2, they tell her no, and Senator Ziono, is that it? Is that how you say it? Can't remember. Sort of leads the charge of giving Hera a hard time, and from there, they ultimately tell her no, and then Hera kind of calls back to Ahsoka and Sabine and Hu Yang, and is like, hey, there's no help coming, and literally in the middle of that message, there's interference, and their signals are being jammed, and then we're into this really, really fun dogfight, and it sort of starts with Ahsoka and Sabine at odds with one another, and they're not really working together that well, and Hu Yang is like, you need to work together, basically, or this isn't going to go well, and there won't be a next time. So a little bit into the fight, they end up doing just that, and the closer they get to this hyperspace ring that's in the middle, that they're very confused about, and it sort of is like, what's going on here? The question is even asked, like, is this the start to another Death Star? And it's not. There's just never been a hyperspace ring that they've seen that's that big. I think it's using 4 hyperdrives or something like that. Something crazy. They start coming up on it, and right as they're approaching it, basically point blank, gonna go through it, they get hit. Sabine has to fix the ship, and Ahsoka has this awesome sequence where she goes out on the wing in kind of a space suit and actually takes out one of the ships with her lightsaber in space. That was really freaking cool. I love to see that. Thought it was a lot of fun. And the whole dogfight was honestly a lot of fun too. It was cool seeing Shin Hati with her, it's the very Jedi-esque headset that Anakin and Obi-Wan are wearing in episode 3 at the beginning, and even Obi-Wan in episode 2, if I'm not mistaken. I thought that was a really cool nod to some prequel stuff that was really fun. It's clear that Baylan and Shin are very much Jedi. They're just dark Jedi. I think the more that we see them, the more that we're kind of understanding their characters, the more that we're learning they're disgruntled Jedi, essentially. And I don't quite know what their end goal is outside of Baylan just being like power. But, you know, that could mean anything. That could mean a whole lot of stuff. That could mean he's going to betray Morgan Elsbeth. We don't know. Like, we don't know just yet. But it was really cool. And ultimately, Sabine ends up fixing the ship, and then they move further and further towards this planet, and they see the space whales, which was really cool to see from Rebels. And then when they kind of land, Sabine is just like, the last time I saw those creatures was when Ezra was taken. And I thought that was just a really cool nod. I think it's clear that they're getting very close to Ezra, if he's not even on that planet already. And then when Hu Yang boots back up, we actually get to find out what they're called, I think, for the first time. I could be wrong about that. But I don't recall them ever having a name in Rebels, but they're called Purgle. And then Hu Yang also does a little bit of an exposition dump where he explains what the hyperspace ring is, basically tells Ahsoka and Sabine that it's capable of hopping to another galaxy, which I think this is the first time we're going to a different galaxy in Star Wars, if I'm not mistaken, kind of from the main canon. That's my thought, because everything always starts with in a galaxy far, far away. So I don't know, and everything is, I'm assuming, is taking place in the same galaxy. There are different systems within the galaxy, which is why we're like jumping to all these different planets. But I think that that's maybe why they needed 4 hyperdrives, or however many hyperdrives it is. I can't remember. And then we're on to the next episode, which is going to be next week. So for my thoughts on this episode, I thought it was paced really well. I thought at the beginning it was going to potentially be a slower episode, which I was a little skeptical of at first, I'm not going to lie. I feel like, especially with Mando Season 3, we had a lot of those that felt like they lollygagged. And even, honestly, in Mando Season 1, we had a lot of that too. Just sort of the, the kind of mission of the week sort of thing. And I was really, really hoping that the show was going to get away from some of that. And at the end of this episode, I felt safe to say it definitely seems like we're not doing that with this show. It seems like there's going to be a very clear through line, and we're not just going to kind of throw in random characters and certain episodes to spice things up and be like, oh, remember this? Or, oh man, they're back. Like that whole thing. I don't think we're doing that dance with this show. I think that there's a very clear through line. And I think that some of that exposition that even Hu Yang is dumping at the end is just to kind of get people caught up from Rebels that maybe haven't watched Rebels yet, which is a nice thing. Honestly, it's like it's giving an entryway to watch this show for folks that don't want to watch 4 seasons of an animated show that they may not be interested in, which is completely fair. You should watch it. It's a really good show. Same with Clone Wars. But I understand that that's a big undertaking, and a lot of people aren't going to want to do that. Like, I have friends that keep telling me I need to watch One Piece, and dude, it ain't never going to happen, regardless of how good it is. I also thought it was good to go ahead and establish that, yes, we are headed to another galaxy. It makes me think that maybe in the next episode, we're going to get there. We're going to kind of see what's going on with Thrawn, with Ezra, with all this different stuff. Like maybe we're going to right off the rip sort of get a sense for where we're headed and not waste time just getting there. I think that was a lot of people's apprehensions with the first couple episodes is, oh, it's another MacGuffin. Oh, we've got to find this to get this, to get this, to get this. And then, oh, before you know it, the show's over. It looks like we're not doing that. It looks like we're actually going to get away from that sort of thing and get more into the crux of, okay, what are we actually doing here? This hyperdrive ring isn't a Death Star. It's not some world-destroying thing. What is the real threat of Thrawn returning outside of just establishing the Imperial Army again? What's actually going on here? Is Ezra actually alive? Obviously, we're pretty sure Ezra's alive. With all of that, I think that the next episode, I don't know where we're going. You know what I mean? We may spend the whole episode on that planet that Ahsoka and Sabine landed on. Maybe not. I don't know if Hera's going to join in with them before we get over to the new galaxy or whatever it's going to be. But we're kind of in uncharted waters for the first time. And I think that's really stinking cool. I think it's fresh. I think it's nice to take a break from sort of the legacy stuff and still respect it and pay homage to it, of course, because technically Ahsoka's a legacy character in a sense. I know that she was brought in with the animated Clone Wars show and everything, but really she's been around since Anakin and Obi-Wan were fighting together in the Clone Wars. So she's kind of a legacy character. I also think that the characters are starting to come into their own a little bit more, especially Sabine. Like there were multiple times this episode where I felt like Sabine was really leaning into a lot of the Sabine-isms that we had in Rebels. And that was interesting to watch unfold in a live action sense. And even Ahsoka, as stoic as she's sort of been and reserved as she's sort of been, and I know that people have been griping about that as well. I actually had 3 people before I even did that review last week reach out to me and say, yeah, Ahsoka's feeling a little weird, like the character Ahsoka, not the show, but like the character is feeling weird. She's feeling off from how she felt in Clone Wars. And I feel like that's completely fair criticism. However, she's just older. She's a lot older. She's lived a lot more. Like there's been more happen to her. I think that all of those things kind of compound and make the character a little more weathered than she has been in the past. So it's neat to see a little bit of that spark and smile and a few of those other things pop out in her character in this episode, especially when they were dogfighting and stuff. It was clear that you could see that little kid inside of her is kind of coming out a little bit more. It's reminding her maybe of the old days when she was fighting alongside Anakin and flying ships with him, and now she's kind of on the other side. You know, she's the mentor and she's got a Padawan. It's cool. It's cool to see. The music continues to be outstanding in this show. It really, really does. It feels very Star Wars. As much as I love the music in Mandalorian, it's not very Star Warsy. This feels very Star Wars, and it's just cool, man. It's cool. It's cool to see lightsabers. It's cool to see like a lot of dogfights in space. It's cool to see. I don't know. I was telling someone earlier that a lot of the Mandalorian stuff and everything it's neat. It definitely feels like it exists within the Star Wars universe, all those sorts of things, and obviously bringing in those characters that we know and love allows it to sort of go more in a more Star Wars direction. But this is the first show that feels Star Wars through and through without relying solely on those sorts of things. We have 2 Dark Jedi that we have never seen before. We don't know anything about them, and they feel imposing and like real threats. We have this looming threat of Thrawn, who we haven't seen yet in live action, but we sort of have established through Rebels. I see all the criticism for this show, and I'm just not understanding it from a fan perspective. Some of the gripes, sure, and people are 100% able to have their own opinions, and I understand that. That's completely fair. You can disagree with me, but as a kid who grew up with the prequels, this is really striking a lot of chords with me. And yeah, it's not perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect, but does it feel like Star Wars? It feels like Star Wars to me. And that's the first time that a Disney show has really done that for me. And I've enjoyed Mando. I enjoyed aspects of Boba Fett. I'm going to be real. Andor, I haven't even finished yet. I found it boring at the beginning. I know. Everyone says it's awesome. Everyone says it's the best Star Wars show that they've done so far. I'm going to finish it. But then at the end, I also was just thinking about how we got introduced to Hera's son, Jason. Well, Hera and Kanan's son, Jason. And he tells Hera that he wants to be a Jedi. And, oh, man, the longing for her son to want to be a Jedi after his dad sacrificed himself for her friends, for the rebellion, for like all of that. You can see the pride in Hera's eyes when he says that, and she's like, I know you do. It got me thinking, though, like, I don't know that Hera necessarily would want Ahsoka to train him. Perhaps, maybe that's why she's pushing Ahsoka to train Sabine, or pushed for Ahsoka to train Sabine. But I was also thinking there's another Jedi in the galaxy that's starting a training academy for young Jedi. It could be interesting to see what that's about. I think that this show is really good so far. I thoroughly enjoyed this episode. Even though it was only like 30 minutes long, it felt longer to me in a good way. It didn't overstay its welcome. They didn't just throw stuff in to throw stuff in. I felt like it did what it needed to do, and then it let you go. And that's all you can really ask for, is for your time not to be wasted and to enjoy it while it's happening. But this is where I leave it off to you. What did you think of episode 3 of Ahsoka? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did you hate it? How are you liking the series so far? I want to hear from you. So please leave a comment, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like this video if you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you on the next one. May the Force be with you.